Let's see what else is making news in business and economics. We're talking with Suzanne Haddan, Managing Director of the BFG Financial Services Group. Suzanne,
Morning,
welcome.
Suzanne.
Thanks for having me again.
Let's start with what's been happening overseas. Certainly we had that news as far as North Korea and the United States is concerned. That lifted markets yesterday, certainly in Asia.
Well, certainly geopolitical risks like that are reducing, markets love that. And there's been great concern what would happen if North Korea completely went rogue. So markets generally take comfort when risk is being extracted from those risks, and that's what happened.
And also, of course, we had that announcement about the tariffs from the United States on steel and aluminium. We're not sure exactly how things will fall in terms of exemptions, but how have the markets been reacting to that?
Well, that concerns markets because what you don't want is trade wars around the world because it slows down economic growth. And at the moment, everybody's trying to buddy up with the United States to see if they can get an exemption, and it looks as if Australia will, and I'm sure BlueScope is very excited about that outcome.
Well, it's interesting, though, having just read those headlines out of Germany, that the European Union feels as though making an exemption too. Remains to be seen then who's actually going to be paying
I
that.
know. I think it's kind of targeted. China might be a little uneasy, but the rest of the world is certainly trying to get out of the tariff. So what you don't want is the response from the rest of the world setting tariffs as well. That will create inefficiencies in the world economy and reduce GDP.
Now, Suzanne, we had International Women's Day this week, and there's still such a huge gap between men and women when it comes to superannuation.
There is. At retirement right now, women have about 40% less in their retirement savings. And why is that? Now, the first is we live longer, which is great, but we work less time in the workforce and we earn less. It's still somewhere between 15 and 22% less women are paid over their lifetimes, depending on what measure you take for bonuses. And that gender pay gap and time out of the workforce reduces our wealth.
So based on that, do you figure it may well take at least another generation before that gap is closed? And as far as when women retire at the same time perhaps as men, that there may be some equality there as far as the super balances are concerned?
Well, I was terribly concerned when I saw one article that suggested it'd be 217 years. I know, I'm thinking, oh no,
Whoa.
that's not going to cut it.
Yes.
So some of the factors are female participation rates. That we spoke last time that's increased, it's over 60%, but men are over 70%. And so we need to get more women into the workforce.
And of course, that makes economic sense. It's better for business.
It's better for business, it's better for productivity, because as productivity increases in a country, living standards rise, and that's the outcome you want. But we have to have strategies to, if we're not going to get the pay gap closed, what can we do with superannuation to help women narrow that gap? And there's quite a few rules in place that if women were aware of them, they might use them. For example, if you could give, as a low-income earner, if you gave up $20 of your pay per week, the government would tip in about $10 per week. That could give you close to $200,000 more in your retirement. Now, how many cappuccinos is that in a week?
A lot.
A lot.
One day for me.
Yeah, one day cappuccino. The other thing that we take time out of the workforce on average for caring for others, whether it's children or parents or whatever the case. If you're partnered, be aware that your partner's superannuation can be transferred over to your account. So treat super coming into the family as our super, not your partner's
as
super.
one large nest egg, I guess. It's also a question of how long someone is in the workforce. How does that differ between the genders, between men and women, as far as when their retirement age is?
Well, the retirement age, it tends to be women retiring a little bit earlier. And that's not because we are poor workers. It's because often of responsibilities for others in our lives. Women are more often than not the carers for their parents, for their grandchildren, for their children. I'm not discounting men's role, but it still is mainly women. So we have less time in the workforce, lower pay. The outcome isn't good.
Another interesting thing that happened this week was that Energy Australia announced that women will be paid the same as their male colleagues for doing the same job.
That was very sobering,
that's a
wasn't
big
it,
move.
Johanna?
Yeah.
Yes. And to say there was 350 of them in Energy Australia that were being underpaid compared to their male counterparts. I think all of us in business, especially in leadership roles, need to make sure we don't have these biases that say, oh, the woman will accept a lower pay. And as women, we have to get in there and push, and ask for those increases. It is okay.
Suzanne, just before you go, a snapshot of the Australian economy as it stands at the moment, and also I guess there's been a lot of volatility clearly in the markets recently, some of that based on those rising bond yields.
So bond yields is something to watch, and we spoke about that last time. The US bond yields, how far past 3% will it go, and what does it mean? It has impact for infrastructure and real estate trusts, so property trusts. So think about utilities like energy and water. They're very much bond proxies, safe havens. And if people see bond yields going up, they can move out of those investments and back into bonds. So infrastructure doesn't all move the same way. The important message I've got there is make sure your infrastructure exposure is diversified between toll roads, airports, utilities.
Good advice. All right, Suzanne, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.